Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. No matter how deeply fans love Harry Potter, it's hard to deny the obvious. J.K. Rowling's magical world sometimes feels like a patchwork quilt, colourful but full of holes. These inconsistencies don't ruin the story, but they do raise eyebrows and leave us with more questions than answers. Today, we're diving a little deeper and asking most uncomfortable questions about this universe, because magic isn't just about wands and broomsticks, it's also about world-building logic, which can't be ignored. Enjoy the video. Number 1. Why are so many magical objects useless? The wizarding world is filled with incredible artifacts. A tent can become a real house, a pensieve stores the most important memories, and the Weasley family clock shows the location of each member. But alongside these wonders, Harry encounters items that are, well, pointless. Take the sneakoscope that constantly blinked around Ron without providing any real information. Or Neville's remembrall, which glowed red, but never told him what he had forgotten. Students still use quills and inkwell, when magical auto-writing would be far more practical. In a world with a mirror that reveals the deepest desires of your soul, why has no one invented a proper magical notebook? Number 2, why is Hogwarts' curriculum so strange? At first glance, the subjects sound exciting. Potions, transfiguration, defense against the dark arts. The dream of any child. But as the books progress, one starts to wonder, how does this help in real life? Some classes seem outright questionable, like divination, which most students dismissed as nonsense. Or care of magical creatures, all fascinating but way too niche. Where are the basics? Why not teach arithmetic, law fundamentals, or even basic economics? If wizards are supposed to be intelligent, why don't they teach children skills they'll actually need, even when dealing with muggles? Number 3, why are there so few career paths? By 5th year, students have a career consultation. Harry dreams of becoming an Auror, and McGonagall tells him which subjects he must pass. But here's the problem. The wizarding world's job market seems oddly limited. There's the Ministry of Magic teaching at Hogwarts, St. Mungo's Hospital, and Quidditch. That's about it. The Weasley twins' joke shop is treated more like a quirky exception than a valid career. What did Harry's parents do for a living? Where are the artisans, researchers, architects, engineers, journalists, or lawyers? Maybe being a wizard is hard by default, but with only 5 career paths, Hogwarts feels more like a trade school than a real educational institution. Number 4, so how many students are there at Hogwarts? Harry's Gryffindor year includes 4 roommates, Ron, Neville, Seamus, and Dean. Presumably, there are 5 girls in their year as well. That means 9 or 10 students per house per year. Multiply that by 7 years and you get around 280-300 students across all 4 houses. Yet Rowling once said in an interview that Hogwarts has around 1,000 students. So where are the rest? Why don't we see more students? Why aren't the classes crowded or the Great Hall packed? It's even stranger considering that Hogwarts is supposedly the only wizarding school in Britain, 1,000 magical children for the entire country. Then where do all the ministry employees, Auror squads, and the crowd at the Quidditch World Cup come from? Number 5. How is magical power measured? Dumbledore and Voldemort are the recognized giants of magic. They're respected, feared, and practically unstoppable in battle. But why? What makes them so powerful? We're never told how magical strength is measured. Is it innate talent, intelligence, training, motivation? The scene where Molly Weasley kills Bellatrix Lestrange only adds to the confusion. Bellatrix is a battle-hardened dark witch. Molly is a housewife. So is love stronger than years of combat? Or did the script just decide it was time for a dramatic female victory? Number 6. Why wasn't the unbreakable vow used all the time? The unbreakable vow is a magical oath. Break it, and you die. But it only appears once, when Snape promises to help Draco Malfoy. Which raises a logical question. Why wasn't it used more often? Why didn't Voldemort make all Death Eaters swear loyalty with it? Why doesn't the Ministry use it in contracts? The wizarding world clearly lacks institutional accountability. And if you have a spell that guarantees honesty, why are you still relying on parchment and stamps? Number 7. How are new spells created? Spells are the foundation of everything. Harry learns Expecto Patronum, Lumos, Expelliarmus. Each time, a new combination of words and wand movements. But who invents them? How are new spells created? Where are they registered? With potions, it's clear. Recipe, ingredients, outcome. But with magical words, can a student invent a spell and teach it to others? Or does it take years of research and ministry approval? And if spells can be created, why hasn't magical technology advanced? Where are the innovative new charms, or is everything secretly patented and locked away? Number 8. Why do wizards hide from muggles? In Goblet of Fire, the Quidditch World Cup ends in chaos. Muggles are tortured, the sky splits with the dark mark, and the ministry spends days erasing memories. "We've had to do a massive memory charm job on them," said Arthur Weasley. It wasn't the first time. Every magical accident, every creature sighting, every broomstick mishap was followed by a flurry of obliviators. The statute of secrecy wasn't a choice, it was law, but no one ever questioned it. Not even Dumbledore, not Hermione, not the ones who had lived both lives. Wizards stayed hidden not because they had to, but because they believed they should. But the world had changed. Muggles no longer burned witches at the stake, they debated magic on Reddit. And still the magical community acted as if exposure meant war, as if revelation would shatter something sacred. Wizards could heal cancers with a wand, could predict storms with centaurs, could save thousands, but they didn't. "The Muggles have their ways, we have ours," said Hagrid. Maybe that's the truth, or maybe it's a shield, a way to stay superior, because if the magical world ever stepped into the light, it would have to answer for its secrets and share its power. Number 9. Why do wizards understand so little about the Muggle world? Arthur Weasley stared at a rubber duck like it held ancient secrets. "Tell me, what exactly is the function of a rubber duck?" he asked Harry in Chamber of Secrets. He worked in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office. He dealt with enchanted plugs and bewitched radios. And yet he didn't know what batteries were. Wizards lived alongside Muggles. They walked the same streets. They bought food from the same shops. But even the most educated wizards acted like microwaves were dark magic. Not because they were stupid, because no one had taught them to be curious. Students at Hogwarts weren't allowed pens. They used quills and inkpots that spilled and scratched. They wrote on parchment instead of paper. Hermione Granger, who came from a Muggle household, never introduced the class to calculators or even sticky notes, not because she couldn't, but because tradition forbade it. Magic could bend time, but couldn't accept a ballpoint pen. It felt deliberate, like the magical world feared convenience, feared losing its identity, so instead it mocked the Muggle world, and in doing so, made itself smaller. Number 10. Why is it so easy to escape from Azkaban? Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban without a wand, no tunnel, no outside help, just his animagus form, a big black dog. He was the first person to escape Azkaban, Fudge said in Prisoner of Azkaban, and he looked terrified. But instead of asking how this was even possible, the Ministry panicked. They sent more Dementors, no upgrades, no security spells, just more soul-sucking guards who couldn't even tell a man from a mutt. And when the Dementors turned on their masters and joined Voldemort, the prison's defenses collapsed overnight. It wasn't an attack, it was abandonment. The Lestranges walked free. So did Antonin Dolohov, Augustus Rookwood, and others who had sworn loyalty to the Dark Lord. There were no alarms, no magical barriers, no Plan B. The Ministry had built its most secure prison on fear, using creatures that fed on pain. No locks, no enchantments, just hope that the Dementors stayed loyal. But they never were. "They deserted Azkaban," Dumbledore said flatly, "and with them went the illusion of control. Azkaban wasn't a fortress, it was a gamble. One the Ministry lost. Again, number 11. Why do wizards still use owls to deliver mail? Hedwig soared through storms, dodged spells, and once even got hit delivering a letter. In Order of the Phoenix, she returned injured, one wing hanging awkwardly. "She's been intercepted," said Harry, panicked. And yet, this was the norm. Wizards, for all their brilliance, still relied on birds to carry messages across continents. Not enchanted fire, not Patronus communication, just feathers and beaks. It made no sense. In Deathly Hallows, when the Order moved Harry to safety, they refused to use owls at all. "Too risky," said Moody. "If that's the case during war, why not always? Why hasn't a magical society capable of curing werewolf bites in seconds figured out secure messaging? They can apparate across oceans, speak through fire, conjure spectral animals that fly through walls and speak in full sentences, yet Hogwarts still sends letters to Muggle homes via owl, expecting the bird to find a chimney in Surrey. Even Hermione's parents received their daughter's first Hogwarts letter this way. Not a knock on the door, not a spell, just owl droppings and old parchment. Wizards could invent spells to levitate furniture and erase memories, but instant magical texting, apparently too modern. They aren't keeping tradition, they're refusing progress. And in doing so, they put feathers over function time and time again. Number 12. Why is the Ministry of Magic so inefficient? Cornelius Fudge stood before the press, pale and sweating, declaring that everything was fine. "He's not back," he insisted, even after Cedric Diggory's body lay cold in the grass. In Order of the Phoenix, the Ministry didn't just deny Voldemort's return, they waged war on the truth. They smeared Harry in the press, silenced Dumbledore, and placed Dolores Umbridge at Hogwarts like a badge of fear. Umbridge tortured children with her blood quill, sent Dementors after Harry, and rewrote education to fit propaganda. All while the Dark Lord rebuilt his army. The Ministry's failure wasn't a mistake, it was policy. Even before Fudge, corruption ran deep. Barty Crouch Sr. sent people to Azkaban without trial. Lucius Malfoy bought influence with donations. And during the war, no one stopped the infiltration of Death Eaters. Rufus Scrimgeour tried to save face, but offered no protection. "The Ministry has fallen," said Kingsley's Patronus at Bill and Fleur's wedding. 6 words that shattered any illusion of safety. A government that should have defended its people became a liability. It was built on secrecy, fear, and control, not justice, not truth. And when the war ended, nothing changed. No structural reform, no checks on ministerial power. Kingsley Shacklebolt, a war hero, took over. But where were the new laws? Where were the protections? In the Muggle world, such a collapse would spark hearings, resignations, revolutions. In the Wizarding world, it was just another quiet shift of power. A new face at the top and the same broken system underneath. It wasn't just Voldemort that endangered wizardkind. It was the Ministry's blindness that let him rise again. Number 13. Why are werewolves and other beings so heavily discriminated against? Remus Lupin was kind, intelligent, and brave. Students loved him. Even Snape, who hated almost everyone, once admitted Lupin was the best of that bunch from the old Marauder gang. And yet the moment his secret came out, that he was a werewolf, he was gone. Not fired, he resigned, because he knew the outcry would follow. "Parents will not want a werewolf teaching their children," he told Harry, in Prisoner of Azkaban. One whispered truth, and a brilliant teacher was erased from Hogwarts without protest. Not even Dumbledore tried to stop him. This wasn't fear, it was prejudice. The same society that forgave Death Eaters after the war refused to give werewolves a second look. Fenrir Greyback, violent, savage, gleeful in his cruelty, had poisoned public opinion beyond repair. But Greyback wasn't the rule, he was the exception. Most werewolves lived in hiding, unemployed and unwanted. The wolfsbane potion, invented to help them live normal lives, existed, but no one offered it. The Ministry didn't fund it. Shops didn't stock it. Even Lupin, for most of his life, couldn't afford it. J.K. Rowling wrote a world where house elves serve in silence, centaurs are mistrusted, and goblins are denied wands. Every magical creature is judged not for who they are, but what they are. Lupin's story was only one thread in a much larger tapestry of discrimination. When he volunteered to fight in the Order of the Phoenix, Molly Weasley objected. "You've heard what he is," she said to Sirius, not who he was, what, as if his illness erased his humanity. The wizarding world claims to value love, loyalty, and courage. But when it comes to those who don't fit its narrow mold, the mask slips. The laws don't protect magical creatures, the schools don't teach compassion, the ministry doesn't regulate justice, it regulates fear. If someone like Remus Lupin couldn't find a place in that world, what chance did others have? The tragedy isn't that he was different, the tragedy is that no one ever tried to see beyond it. Number 14. Why isn't Muggle medicine used in the magical world? Wizards can regrow bones overnight and cure venomous bites with a sip of potion, yet when it comes to mental illness, they stand helpless. Frank and Alice Longbottom, two brilliant auras, were tortured into madness by Bellatrix Lestrange. They never recovered. Every time Neville visits them at St. Mungo's, they don't even recognize their own son. She gave him an empty wrapper, we read in Order of the Phoenix, and he pocketed it like it meant the world. That's how broken the magical system is. Comfort comes in candy wrappers, not cures. And still, no healer in the wizarding world ever tried to consult Muggle experts. Not a single mind healer thought to open a neuroscience book or speak with a psychiatrist. Why? Modern Muggle science has developed countless ways to study the brain. They use MRI scans, cognitive therapy, and medication for trauma. Wizards, on the other hand, have never even classified what exactly happened to the Longbottoms beyond permanent spell damage. It's as if they fear what they don't understand, and they'd rather preserve their pride than admit Muggles might know something they don't. Madame Pomfrey is a miracle worker for physical injuries, but when Luna Lovegood was kidnapped, or when Harry experienced the trauma of Cedric's death, no professional offered help. Not even Dumbledore. Instead, they left these children to process horror on their own. Hermione once said, "Daddy, just because you've got the emotional range of a teaspoon doesn't mean we all have." But maybe it wasn't Ron she was scolding. Maybe it was the entire magical establishment stuck in emotional ignorance, too proud to evolve. If just one healer from St. Mungo's teamed up with a Muggle psychiatrist, could they have saved the Longbottoms? Could they have treated Bellatrix before she turned into a monster? Could Harry have healed instead of hardened? The magical world calls itself advanced, but maybe true progress starts with humility and a willingness to listen to those without wands. Number 15. Why doesn't the education system take students' abilities into account? In the grand halls of Hogwarts, where moving staircases echo with the footsteps of generations and portraits whisper secrets from the past, the illusion of a perfect magical education persists. The enchanted ceilings, the long wooden tables of the Great Hall, and the noble crests of the four houses all suggest a system built with wisdom and care. Yet hidden beneath the glitter of spells and the romance of ancient magic lies a troubling truth, one that becomes clearer with each reread of J.K. Rowling's magical saga. The truth is this: Hogwarts, for all its wonder, fails its students. Every child who enters through the great oak doors is swept into a one-size-fits-all curriculum, regardless of talent, passion, or purpose. A witch with a natural affinity for healing must sit through lessons in divination, studying tea leaves and crystal balls. A wizard who dreams of crafting magical artifacts must memorize star charts in astronomy, even if he cares little for planetary movement. There is no deviation, no specialization, no opportunity for a student to tailor their education to their strengths or dreams. The world of magic expects uniformity in a society that thrives on difference. When Harry first arrives, the excitement of a new world overshadows the deeper flaws. But even in his first year, the cracks begin to show. Hermione, the most academically driven student of her generation, is seen struggling with subjects that offer her no intellectual reward. She continues with divination until she calls it woolly and drops it as soon as she can. Her case is telling. Here is a brilliant mind with a passion for structure, logic, and research, yet forced to waste time on subjects that clash with her nature. Honestly, I think divination seems very woolly, she says. A lot of guesswork, if you ask me. Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 6. In any sensible system, Hermione would have been fast-tracked toward research, spell development, or magical lore. Instead, she memorizes nonsense about grim omens and Mars being bright. Neville Longbottom's torment is even more severe. Clearly gifted in herbology, he finds his self-esteem crushed in classes like potions, where Snape belittles him. The system does nothing to nurture his obvious botanical genius, no mentor, no advanced lab for plant-based spellwork, no encouragement of his curiosity. Professor Sprout notices his talent, but there's no structured path for him to go deeper. He is, for years, considered a failure because he doesn't fit the mold. Only after the chaos of war strips away the walls of academia do we see Neville for what he truly is, a specialist in herbology, a teacher, and a war hero. But that flowering could have come years earlier if Hogwarts had given him the tools. Even Fred and George Weasley, dismissed by many as comic relief, are inventors of a rare kind. Their magical joke shop is filled with original, complex items, skiving snack boxes, darkness powder, extendable ears. These aren't amateur tricks, they are engineered with a precision that suggests deep knowledge of magical ingredients, enchantment layering, and product testing, and yet they barely survive school. Their brilliance goes unrecognized by the staff, their curiosity unsupported by curriculum. They are entrepreneurs without training, engineers without blueprints. Had there been an elective for magical innovation, for business, for enchantment design, imagine what they might have built before the war even began. The flaw runs deeper than personal neglect. The entire examination structure of Hogwarts is predicated on shallow assessment. The OWLs and NEWTs test memory and short-term performance, but not long-term development or applied mastery. A student with a deep understanding of magical creatures but poor test-taking skills may never make it into the department for the regulation and control of magical creatures. The same goes for students interested in magical lore, artifact design, spell invention, or healing. There is no preparatory track for careers, no internships, no apprenticeship options until much later, often too late. In the Muggle world, by the time a student reaches secondary school, they are offered a choice: arts or sciences, practical or theoretical, academic or vocational. There are schools that specialize in technology, in medicine, in the humanities. Some teens go on to universities, others to technical schools. This variety respects the uniqueness of each student and gives society specialists in every field. Hogwarts, by contrast, offers astronomy to everyone, but no focused study of magical medicine, even though St. Mungo's requires decades of training. It offers history of magic, but not magical ethics, governance, or international diplomacy, despite the existence of the Wizengamot and the International Confederation of Wizards. One of the more glaring omissions in the Hogwarts curriculum is the lack of any formal training for future healers. Madame Pomfrey is competent and tireless, but how many students learn under her wing? None. There are no healing electives, no clubs, no labs. Potions are taught, but only as recipes, not as part of a comprehensive medical program. A gifted student in magical healing has nowhere to go inside Hogwarts. They must hope to qualify for the training program at St. Mungo's after leaving school, despite no prior structured preparation. This leads to another unsettling truth. The magical world has remarkably few experts. Aside from names like Severus Snape, Phileas Flitwick, or Minerva McGonagall, there are shockingly few wizards who display exceptional knowledge in a single field. And even these standouts are not the result of a specialized system, they are self-made. Snape's mastery of potion-making, revealed in the marginalia of his old textbook, is entirely self-taught. His inventions and improvements, like the alteration of the draught of living death, are not something Hogwarts nurtured. They are a product of obsession, isolation, and pain. He became a genius in spite of the system, not because of it. Number 16. Why is magical history never studied critically? At the back of every dusty corridor in Hogwarts, behind the cold walls of forgotten classrooms, there is a truth that no one dares to speak aloud. The magical world has no memory. It's not that memory is erased. Far worse, it is ignored. In the history of magic classroom, where time seems to have collapsed into a single, endless monotone, Professor Binns continues his lifeless recitation of names, dates, treaties, and goblin rebellions. His voice, as Harry once noticed, was an endless drone that made it very difficult to concentrate. Not just difficult, impossible. And yet this was the only subject where wizards and witches were supposed to learn from their past. But what kind of lesson can be learned from sleep? The ghost of Professor Binns, quite literally, symbolizes how the magical world treats its history. Dead, dull, and disturbingly disconnected from present danger. Why is it that this subject, so vital after 2 dark wars, is still treated like a collection of irrelevant footnotes? Why, after the horror of Gellert Grindelwald's rise in the 1940s and Lord Voldemort's reign of terror just decades later, is there no deep inquiry, no confrontation, no accountability? Hogwarts teaches students how to duel, how to transform objects, how to brew potions, and cast defensive charm. But it doesn't teach them to think. Hermione Granger, perhaps the brightest student in her year, described history of magic as the most boring subject, and often had to force herself to pay attention. If even she couldn't stay engaged, what hope was there for the rest? More importantly, what kind of curriculum refuses to evolve after its students have nearly died multiple times within its walls? In their 5th year, the trio discovered the Room of Requirement and used it to form Dumbledore's army. There they learned practical defense, but not once did they study why Voldemort's ideology had taken hold so easily. Not once were they taught how Grindelwald's vision of magical supremacy nearly consumed Europe. These weren't just battles. They were ideologies, political movements, moral failures. But Hogwarts preferred silence. Dumbledore himself, once Grindelwald's closest friend, never gave a public lecture on what went wrong. His past, as Rita Skeeter famously uncovered, was shrouded in shame and mystery, but shouldn't it have been studied? Not for gossip, but for insight? The Second Wizarding War ended with the fall of Voldemort, but even after that the structure of magical education remained untouched. The Ministry of Magic, battered and corrupted by infiltration, made no effort to revise the educational canon. Dolores Umbridge, who once banned any mention of Voldemort's return, was a ministry official. Her goal was not to protect students, but to control truth. And yet, when the war ended, she wasn't the only one left unpunished. She was one of many. No tribunal reformed the way knowledge was delivered to children. No curriculum committee decided to add ethics in magical history or political propaganda and magical media. What were they afraid of? Fear is a powerful silencer. Consider how little the students knew about the First Wizarding War. When Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were given only the Ministry's version of events. The truth, that Sirius was innocent, had been buried beneath layers of institutional incompetence. It took personal effort and almost death for the truth to emerge. If the wizarding world can so easily forget, or worse, rewrite its own recent history, what does that say about the older eras? Grindelwald's crimes, for instance, are barely mentioned in the classroom. The man who nearly brought the entire magical world to its knees is now a footnote in a ghost's lecture. Binns might refer to the global wizarding conflict as if it were a trade disagreement. But this was war, with death camps, purges, forbidden experiments, and international terror. Who teaches young witches and wizards to recognize the signs before such ideologies rise again? Who encourages them to question power when it whispers promises of purity and dominance? Harry Potter, despite being at the center of 2 wars, was never invited to speak to students about what he had witnessed. He was a living record of trauma, courage, and resistance. And yet Hogwarts simply absorbed him into its staff years later, as though experience and survival were enough. But Harry never had the chance to tell his story in a structured way. There was no module titled The Rise and Fall of Voldemort, a survivor's perspective. No forum where students could ask, how did it happen again? Could we have stopped it sooner? What signs did we miss? The centaurs of the Forbidden Forest, with their celestial wisdom, once warned of dangers that wizards chose not to see. Firenze, the centaur who became a divination professor, once told his students that the future was murky. But isn't that exactly why the past should be made clear? If divination is the art of interpreting signs, then history should be the discipline that shows us the patterns. And yet no student learns how Voldemort gained followers, how he exploited fear, how the Ministry failed to act in time. The silence is deafening. Consider also the treatment of house elves, goblins, and centaurs. Their histories, filled with rebellion, oppression, and resistance, are skimmed over or ignored. Goblin rebellions are mentioned in passing, usually framed as dangerous and irrational uprisings, never as calls for rights or reform. The story is told from the wizard's perspective, always. No one asks, what did the goblins want? Why were they angry? How were they treated? A critical approach would involve exploring those questions. But the magical world is not ready to critique itself. In the Triwizard Tournament, when Harry faced a Hungarian horntail and other deadly challenges, no one told him the event had a bloody past. Students had died before. The tournament had been banned for a reason, but instead of a historical debriefing, he received only the minimum warning. Where was the lecture on the ethics of spectacle, on the way power systems normalize cruelty in the name of tradition? Where was the memory of death? Number 17. Why are house elves still treated as slaves? Of all the haunting details buried within the enchanting pages of the Harry Potter series, one silent horror lies just beneath the surface of the whimsical magic, talking portraits and brave adventures, the question of the house elves, creatures of immense magical ability, loyal beyond reason, and bound to serve wizarding families without choice, recognition, or payment. Their fate is slavery in all but name. And what is more discomforting is not just the cruelty of their existence, but the alarming indifference from the magical community, even from its supposed champions of morality and justice. When Hermione Granger first encounters the plight of the house elves, her reaction is one of immediate outrage. It occurs in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire during her visit to the Hogwarts kitchens. What she finds there shocks her. At least 100 elves were standing around the kitchen, beaming and bowing as Dobby led the way toward them. They were ecstatic to serve. They refused freedom. When Hermione offers the idea of wages or vacation, the elves recoil in disgust. One elf, Winky, declares, "House elves is not supposed to be paid. House elves is not supposed to have clothes." And that is the root of the horror, the internalized servitude cultivated over centuries of magical indoctrination. Hermione, unlike her peers, refuses to see this as normal. She establishes the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, SPEW, dedicating her time and energy to fight for creatures who themselves do not know they need saving. But her crusade is met not with admiration but with ridicule. Ron Weasley scoffs. Even Harry, who regularly stands up to injustice, finds her efforts awkward and unnecessary. "You're trying to do something for but they don't want it," he says. It is this moment that subtly betrays a greater truth. The wizarding world, for all its grandeur, is built on a foundation of quiet moral rot. The Ministry of Magic, a symbol of authority and order, is deafeningly silent on the matter. It is the very body responsible for regulating magical creatures, yet house elves are granted no rights, no voice, no autonomy. They are classified as non-human, despite their intelligence and magical ability. In Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Newt Scamander describes them as creatures deeply devoted and loyal to those who are kind to them, a statement that reads more like an excuse than an observation. The magical community, it seems, finds comfort in the lie that kindness makes slavery acceptable. What makes this apathy even more jarring is the presence of individuals in the series who fight for the greater good. Albus Dumbledore, hailed as one of the greatest wizards of all time, is revered for his wisdom, compassion, and leadership. Yet during his long tenure as headmaster of Hogwarts, he does nothing to challenge the status quo of house elf servitude. He allows them to cook, clean, and serve the students without pay or acknowledgement. He even remarks, "You will find that I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me," a sentiment steeped in devotion, yet hollow when viewed through the eyes of the unpaid elves who work beneath his feet. There's a chilling moment in The Goblet of Fire when Winky is dismissed from service after a perceived failure. Her distress is unbearable. "Winky is a good elf! Winky is a good elf!" she cries, her voice soaked in anguish. She has been conditioned to believe that her entire worth lies in obedience. When she is freed, she spirals into depression, finds solace in butterbeer, and laments the dishonor of her freedom. That Rowling created such a vivid portrayal of internalized oppression is brilliant, but the world around Winky shows no empathy, no policy changes, no conversations, just a tragic elf and a shrug from society. The only elf who breaks this cycle is Dobby, and he is seen as an anomaly, strange, even unstable. Dobby dares to ask for freedom. He dreams of being paid. He seeks clothes. But his freedom is not a gift. It is an accident of Harry's kindness and Lucius Malfoy's fury. Once free, Dobby becomes a symbol of rebellion. But even then, he is largely alone. Most elves shun him. Wizards treat him as a curiosity, and when he finally dies, it is a quiet tragedy. Buried without fanfare, Dobby is laid to rest by Harry, who carves into his tombstone, "Here lies Dobby, a free elf." A noble sentiment, yes, but it does not change the systemic abuse of others like him. The deeper question that lingers, unasked by most characters in the books, is this: why is the magical world content with slavery? Why is this not a central issue for the Order of the Phoenix, who fight against tyranny? Why does the post-war rebuilding not include the liberation of house elves? The most unsettling answer may be the simplest, because this world, for all its spells and phoenixes, is still our world in disguise. Rowling's magical universe mirrors real-world injustices with startling accuracy. The house elves are a direct parallel to historically enslaved peoples who were stripped of agency and taught to love their chains. The wizarding world, like many societies before it, justifies this by calling it tradition. But tradition is a dangerous thing when it sanctifies cruelty. "They like it" is not a defense. It is a symptom of indoctrination. Characters like Sirius Black, who despise the old pureblood ways, still treat Kreacher, his house elf, with disdain and hostility. Kreacher, in turn, becomes resentful and bitter, clinging to the same ideologies that led to his suffering. It is only when Harry shows him compassion in the Deathly Hallows, speaking to him kindly and treating him with dignity, that Kreacher begins to change. It's a rare moment of hope, but again, it is one-on-one, personal, never institutional. The silence of heroes like McGonagall, Shacklebolt, and even Arthur Weasley, who loves Muggle culture and preaches equality, speaks volumes. None of them challenge the idea that elves should serve. Even as they fight Voldemort's ideology of blood purity, they maintain structures that perpetuate inequality. The irony is unbearable, a war against oppression waged by people who uphold a caste system within their own walls. Number 18. Why does the house system divide children from day one? The sorting ceremony in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is cloaked in wonder and mystery. 11-year-olds arrive at Hogwarts filled with anticipation, unaware that the hat placed upon their head will determine far more than their dormitory. They do not yet understand that the very first magical act in their school lives will categorize them, irreversibly, into one of 4 moral camps: brave Gryffindor, wise Ravenclaw, loyal Hufflepuff, ambitious Slytherin. For Harry Potter, this moment is defining. "Not Slytherin," he whispers under his breath, and the sorting hat complies. But should an 11-year-old truly have to fear being labelled bad on their first day of school? Children arrive at Hogwarts with dreams, insecurities, and identities still in flux. Their values are shaped by family, environment, trauma, and hope. Yet this moment, the sorting, acts as a stamp, one that can cling for life. Draco Malfoy is barely more than a boy when he is placed in Slytherin, a house often seen through the lens of villainy. From that point on, a rift exists. Gryffindors see him as the enemy. Professors anticipate cunning. Expectations solidify. "There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin," Ron says on the train, planting the first seed of prejudice in Harry's mind. That statement is false, of course, but it sets a tone echoed across the books. The system encourages self-fulfilling prophecies. A child sorted into Gryffindor is praised for courage, and so they lean into risk-taking. A Ravenclaw is told they are brilliant, and so they pursue academic pride. A Hufflepuff is quietly overlooked, praised for loyalty, but rarely given the spotlight. And Slytherins are often treated as inherently suspect. The labels become prophecy. When your house is praised in songs as brave or noble and your rivals is described as power-hungry and selfish, how can a child resist internalizing those values or rebelling against them? Hogwarts never offers a system of review or change. The sorting hat makes its declaration, and the decision is final. Not once in the series does a student successfully transfer between houses. This rigidity is baffling given how much change children undergo between 11 and 17. Personalities evolve, beliefs shift, loyalties move. Neville Longbottom, initially dismissed even by the sorting hat as lacking courage, grows into one of the bravest characters in the story. Should he not have had the chance to redefine his identity beyond the confines of a house? The house divisions, though decorative in tradition, carved deep ideological walls. They determine friends, dormitories, and even classroom seating. Mixed house friendships are discouraged by proximity alone. While Harry occasionally interacts with Luna Lovegood of Ravenclaw or Cedric Diggory of Hufflepuff, these are exceptions that only prove the rule. His world is Gryffindor-centric, with Slytherin as the perpetual foil. The Slytherins were huddled together muttering, Rowling writes, when Gryffindor wins the House Cup. The language emphasizes division, even in triumph. There is an inherent danger in assigning moral alignment to groups of children. Slytherins are not just different, they are framed as dangerous. Their common room is underground, near the dungeons. Their colors are dark. Their animal is a serpent, the same symbol as Voldemort's own. Even the ghosts reinforce the narrative. The fat friar of Hufflepuff is jovial. Nearly headless Nick of Gryffindor is playful. But the bloody Baron of Slytherin drips with menace. This mythology permeates how students and readers perceive them. Consider Severus Snape. He was a Slytherin as a child, a Death Eater as a young man, and later a spy who risked everything for love. His life is defined by contradiction, but his time in Slytherin was marked by cruelty from his peers and dismissal from his teachers. How different might his life have been if he had not been sorted into a house that isolated him? Had he sat in a Gryffindor common room instead of the Slytherin dungeon surrounded by different friends, might he have become something else entirely? Or take Regulus Black. Born into a family of pure-blood fanatics, he becomes a Death Eater in his teens. But before he dies, he secretly turns against Voldemort, stealing a Horcrux and sacrificing himself. His redemption is quiet, unseen, and posthumous. Yet he too was a Slytherin. The Sorting Hat did not see the potential for heroism in him, nor did Hogwarts ever offer him an alternative path. In a system where early labels stick for life, complexity becomes an afterthought. The separation of houses is not just cultural, it has consequences. During the Second Wizarding War, most Slytherins flee during the Battle of Hogwarts. The narrative suggests cowardice. But how could they stay? They are children, told all their lives that they belong to a house synonymous with darkness. And when the moment comes to fight, they are not trusted. Slytherin House will leave, Professor McGonagall says. Not may leave, but will. No redemption offered, no chance to stand and defend. This is not to say that house loyalty cannot be a source of pride. Many students, like Hermione Granger or Cedric Diggory, wear their colours with dignity, but even these exceptions are shaped by the labels imposed on them. Hermione is brilliant, yet she is in Gryffindor. Her bravery is prized, but her intellect is secondary. Would she have thrived more fully in Ravenclaw, or did she adapt to Gryffindor's expectations, moulding herself to fit her new identity? And Harry himself is the clearest case. You could be great, you know, the Sorting Hat tells him, trying to place him in Slytherin. It's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. But Harry, influenced by Ron's prejudice, refuses. He fears Slytherin, he fears himself, and so he ends up in Gryffindor, not because it's where he belongs, but because he is scared of the alternative. The Sorting Hat allows it, but it does not encourage it. What if students could choose their house with time? What if instead of a one-time ritual, Hogwarts offered a one-year period of exploration, during which children could take classes with all houses, make friends across dormitories, and then decide for themselves where they felt most at home? What if the Sorting Hat were more like a mentor than a judge? What if it whispered not "you belong here," but "where do you wish to grow"? The rigidity of the system also reinforces bias among the staff. Severus Snape openly favours Slytherins, deducting points unfairly from other houses. McGonagall, though more composed, still supports Gryffindor with visible preference. The bias bleeds into how students treat one another. House unity becomes a competition. Interactions turn into scoreboards. Who won the House Cup? Who won the Quidditch match? Children are told to be loyal, but only to their own. This is especially cruel to Hufflepuff, the house of loyalty and hard work. Its members are kind, grounded, and often mocked. The books offer little insight into their triumphs. They are the house of leftovers, the unchosen ones. Helga Hufflepuff said she would teach all the rest. That generosity is admirable, but it also paints Hufflepuff as the house for those who did not fit the neater categories. It is noble, yes, but also tragically undervalued. The reality is, people are not archetypes. A child can be brave and clever, ambitious and kind. They can be loyal one day, rebellious the next. Yet Hogwarts insists on slicing identity into 4 fixed compartments. There's nothing hidden in your head the Sorting Hat can't see, it claims. But that's an illusion. The mind of a child is still forming. How can a magical hat, however wise, predict the trajectory of a soul? Even Tom Riddle, the boy who became Voldemort, was once just a lonely child. He was sorted into Slytherin at 11, already feared, already different. The house affirmed his worst instincts. It offered no challenge to his darkness, only a mirror. Dumbledore, reflecting on Tom's youth, admits he should have done more. Should the system not have done more too? The world Rowling built is rich, layered, and enchanting. But even magic must be questioned. A school that purports to educate should be willing to evolve. Instead, Hogwarts remains fixed. The same rituals, the same houses, the same stereotypes, passed from generation to generation. No wonder prejudice festers. No wonder so many children are lost in the gaps. The legacy of the sorting hat is not just whimsical, it is a symbol of institutional inertia, a tradition that masquerades as destiny. And for children like Draco, like Snape, like Regulus, and even Harry, it is a tradition that defines far too much, far too soon. Children should be free to grow, to surprise, to change. They should not be confined by colours and crests, not shackled to dormitories like ideological prisons. In the end, the question is not whether the sorting hat is wise, it is whether it is fair, whether a system that divides children from day one, isolates them by value, and denies them the right to change, can ever truly serve their growth. Perhaps it is time for Hogwarts to be braver, not in war, but in reimagining what education truly means, not in sorting children by what they are, but guiding them toward what they might become. Number 19, why don't wizards use magic to solve everyday problems? In the heart of the magical world, where the flick of a wand can levitate a teacup or silence a screaming child, one cannot help but notice a strange paradox. Despite possessing powers that defy the laws of physics and logic, wizards in J.K. Rowling's universe live in surprisingly antiquated ways. Their kitchens resemble Victorian setups, their homes are filled with soot and dust, and their transportation methods range from dangerous to absurd. There are self-stirring cauldrons and flying broomsticks, yet there is barely any sign of magical plumbing, refrigeration, or automated cleaning. The contradiction is as glaring as a howler in the middle of a quiet breakfast. At 12 Grimmauld Place, the ancestral black family home and temporary headquarters for the Order of the Phoenixes, we are introduced to an environment that is both magical and shockingly decrepit. The house is dark, creaking, full of vermin and age-old filth. Kreacher, the bitter house elf, serves grudgingly, but even with magic, the place is barely habitable. The drawing room was a gloomy, vaulted room where the furniture was shrouded in white covers and the chandelier was thick with dust and cobwebs. Rowling writes, "One might expect a household of powerful witches and wizards to wave a wand and freshen up the place, but they don't. They scrub and sweep, groan and cough, behaving more like frustrated homeowners than magical beings." In the Burrow, the home of the Weasley family, the same theme repeats. Although the house is full of life and warmth, it is also cluttered, messy, and structurally questionable. Molly Weasley relies on a mix of magic and elbow grease to manage her large household, but even her spells seem to merely assist in conventional chores, not replace them. A knife cuts vegetables on its own, but the vegetables still need peeling. The dishes wash themselves, but only after meals are finished. It's as if magic is permitted only to nudge tasks along, never to eliminate them altogether. In a world where a single incantation can conjure light or mend a broken bone, why are the Weasleys still living like rural Victorians? Even Hogwarts, the greatest magical institution in Britain, operates in oddly archaic ways. There is no central heating system. Students rely on fireplaces. The castle is full of drafts and moving staircases that create daily inconvenience. Peeves the poltergeist throws ink and water balloons, and no one has found a magical solution to get rid of him in centuries. Bathrooms resemble ancient stone dungeons. The infirmary, run by Madame Pomfrey, is effective thanks to her skill, but it's hard to overlook how the hospital wing lacks even the most basic elements of a modern clinic. Bedpans are charmed to empty themselves, but why are there still bedpans in the first place? The answer, it seems, lies in the deeply entrenched traditions of the magical community. Wizards do not evolve with time. They live in pockets of history, isolated from Muggle society, choosing to preserve customs rather than innovate. Arthur Weasley's fascination with Muggle artifacts speaks volumes. His collection of rubber ducks, battery-powered radios, and toasters reveals how foreign basic Muggle technology is to wizards. He even created a secret department at the Ministry of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, not to understand or promote Muggle inventions, but to prevent magical tampering with them. This suggests a cultural resistance to progress, even when it could improve quality of life. Sirius Black once commented on his family's pure-blood ideology, stating, "My whole family have been in Slytherin. My mother says I've disgraced the family name." His mother's portrait, enchanted to shriek insults and uphold ancestral pride, is a literal representation of how the magical world is chained to its past. The walls of 12 Grimmauld Place are lined with these ghosts of tradition, magical, persistent, and utterly dysfunctional. The very architecture of the wizarding world resists change. Take, for instance, the night bus. Introduced in Prisoner of Azkaban, it barrels down streets at reckless speeds, throwing its passengers about with little regard for comfort or safety. The beds slide back and forth, and there's no seatbelt in sight. Stan Shunpike offers a chaotic ride, not a relaxing journey. Why not create enchanted, smooth-gliding vehicles or teleportation networks that don't involve the nausea-inducing effects of flu powder? Even apparition, the most advanced method of travel, is unreliable and risky. Splinching is a real threat. Why hasn't the Ministry funded research to create safer, more convenient alternatives? The Ministry of Magic itself is a dark, Kafkaesque bureaucracy. While they manage to communicate through enchanted memos that fly like paper airplanes, they still rely on ancient courtrooms, typewriters, and parchment. In Order of the Phoenix, when Harry is summoned for a disciplinary hearing, the process is no more advanced than a Victorian tribunal. The building is hidden underground, built like a labyrinth. There is little sense of modernization or comfort. Magic is used to conceal, punish, and control, not to enlighten or simplify. Serve. The most jarring example is in magical medicine. While Madame Pomfrey can regrow bones overnight, there is no indication of regular preventive care, mental health services, or chronic illness treatment. St. Mungo's Hospital is hidden in an abandoned department store. Inside it's chaotic, with patients in beds and healers bustling around in old-fashioned robes. One would imagine that magical medicine could revolutionize healthcare, but instead it remains reactive, not preventive. There's no concept of routine checkups or health education. Magical prosthetics, wheelchairs, or therapies for long-term disabilities are never mentioned. Lupin, afflicted by lycanthropy, has no cure, only monthly potion treatments. Magical education also suffers from the same static state. Hogwarts teaches charms, transfiguration, and potions, but there is little emphasis on magical engineering or innovation. No classes exist for magical technology development, sustainable magical energy, or enchantment infrastructure. Even the curriculum remains unchanged for decades. Professor Binns, a ghost, continues teaching history of magic in a monotonous drone. No one replaces him. No one questions whether he is effective. The magical community accepts this inertia as normal. It is no surprise, then, that house elves, like Creature and Dobby, are still used for labor despite having magical capabilities themselves. The wizarding world tolerates this servitude under the guise of tradition. Dobby, when given a sock, sees it as liberation, but Hermione's attempt to advocate for elf rights through SPW is mocked by her peers. Wizards are comfortable with systemic inequality because it preserves their way of life. If every home had self-cleaning enchantments or automated meals, the need for house elves would diminish. But tradition wins, even at the cost of progress. The resistance to change even extends to clothing. Wizards still wear robes, pointy hats, and medieval-style garments. Arthur Weasley famously wore a tweed suit with mismatched socks to the Quidditch World Cup, and still didn't get it right. In Goblet of Fire, when wizards try to dress like muggles, the result is comical. One wizard with a kilt and a poncho, another in a nightgown. This inability, or unwillingness, to adapt speaks volumes. They are not interested in blending in or learning from the modern world. They live in a preserved bubble. One would think that with all their magic, they would create enchanted homes that clean themselves, maintain stable temperatures, and even prepare meals based on dietary needs. Instead, the magical community clings to the past, No enchanted heating systems, no self-sterilizing kitchens, no magical waste disposal. It's not that magic can't do these things, it can. But wizards don't ask it to. The mindset is stuck in a nostalgic loop where hard living is a badge of authenticity. Wizards do not build for efficiency. They build for legacy. The pure-blood families trace their heritage through crests, mansions, and family trees. The Malfoys, for example, live in a massive manor, opulent yet cold. Narcissa speaks in clipped, aristocratic tones. Lucius boasts of their ancestry. But their home lacks warmth, modern comforts, or innovation. It is a monument to tradition, grand but lifeless. The same can be said of the gaunt shack, Voldemort's ancestral home, a rotting structure filled with decay, held up by pride and curses. The magical world does not dream forward, it remembers backward. The mirror of Erased, a magical object that reveals one's deepest desires, does not show futures, only fantasies of the past. Dumbledore warns Harry, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." Yet the entire magical world seems to be doing exactly that. Magic, instead of being a tool for human betterment, is a ritualistic echo of what once was. It is not used to move society forward, but to keep it fixed in place. In many ways, the wizarding world operates as a cautionary tale. When power is tied to lineage, when innovation is seen as rebellion, when comfort is equated with laziness, a society stagnates. Rowling paints a world that is rich in wonder, but poor in progress. It may be full of floating candles and flying broomsticks, but it lacks the emotional and structural growth we associate with a healthy civilization. Magic becomes a crutch for survival, not a ladder for evolution. Rowling never directly explains why the wizarding world resists modern convenience, but the implication is clear. Magic, in her universe, is not a liberator. It's a tradition. It is revered, not questioned. And those who do question it, like Hermione or Dumbledore, are rare. The rest are content with how things have always been, dusty, cluttered, and stuck in time. It is a haunting reflection of how even the most powerful tools mean nothing if the minds wielding them are trapped in history. The question remains, what good is magic if it refuses to change the world around it? Number 20. Why is Quidditch such a dangerous and illogical sport? All the peculiarities nestled within J.K. Rowling's enchanting universe, few are as curiously flawed and dangerously romanticized as the sport of Quidditch. A spectacle adored by witches and wizards across the globe, this airborne battle of broomsticks, bludgers, and blinding speeds is celebrated in every corner of magical society. Yet when stripped of its golden nostalgia and glittering snitch, Quidditch reveals something unsettling. A sport engineered less for fairness or safety and more for dramatic chaos. The rules are illogical, the scoring system almost laughably unbalanced, and the danger to young players is beyond anything a responsible adult should sanction. One cannot help but wonder how such a hazardous game has survived centuries of tradition without meaningful reform. The crux of Quidditch's imbalance lies in the golden snitch, the tiny winged ball that zips through the air like a dragonfly on fire, granting the seeker who captures it a staggering 150 points and ending the game instantly. No other position, beater, chaser, or keeper holds such decisive power. It is an open secret that the seeker's success overshadows every other contribution made on the pitch. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Lee Jordan's commentary during Harry's first match bluntly captures this imbalance. That's Smith of Hufflepuff with the quaffle, passes Spinette, nice bludger from Weasley. Wait, Harry's seen the snitch? The entire match turns on that one sighting. Why, then, do the other 6 players on a team even bother? Oliver Wood, the ever-determined captain of the Gryffindor team, once confessed to Harry, "You catch this, Potter, and we win." That sentence should make any observer pause. What kind of team sport assigns so much responsibility and victory to one position, reducing everyone else's efforts to filler? It undermines the very concept of teamwork and strategy. There have been rare instances where catching the snitch didn't secure victory, such as the 1994 Quidditch World Cup, when Victor Krum caught the snitch, but Bulgaria still lost to Ireland by 170 to 160. But those are anomalies, mathematical quirks, rather than testaments to good sport design. This imbalance fosters an environment in which seeker-centric tactics dominate the game. Teams with poor overall coordination but a brilliant seeker can still win, while disciplined teams with tight formations and consistent scoring may lose in seconds. Why not reduce the snitch's point value? Why not allow the match to continue even after its capture? The magical world has reimagined communication, transportation, and healing, yet remains stubbornly loyal to a game structure that makes little logical sense. The danger inherent in Quidditch, however, is where the sport transitions from quirky to disturbing. Players, many of them teenagers, regularly soar at dizzying heights with no visible safety measures. Bludgers, enchanted iron balls that act like guided missiles, are specifically designed to knock players off their brooms. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, a rogue bludger chases Harry mercilessly around the pitch. The narration tells us it was aiming for Harry and seemed to know exactly where he was. The result? Harry's arm is broken mid-match, and Lockhart's botched healing spell removes the bones entirely. This is treated with humor, but imagine the reality: a child plummeting through the air, his bones turned to jelly, no protective spells cast beforehand. There is no mention of helmets, body padding, or even a dedicated medical team standing by. During the same match, Fred and George Weasley try to defend Harry from the bludger, but they are overwhelmed. The audience watches in thrill, unaware of how close they are to witnessing a fatal accident. In a school where students are forbidden to enter the Forbidden Forest without supervision, where love potions are banned and security trolls guard hallways, how does Quidditch receive a free pass to be so life-threatening? Why does Professor McGonagall, usually a voice of discipline and caution, passionately promote the sport to first years like Harry, pushing him into this dangerous role with barely any preparation? One cannot ignore the cultural glorification surrounding Quidditch that blinds the wizarding world to its perils. The Daily Prophet covers matches with breathless admiration, cheering injuries as signs of commitment and passion. Even the Hogwarts faculty, guardians of young minds and bodies, seem more enchanted by tradition than concerned with safety. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, when Ron joins the Gryffindor team, the twins proudly supply him with Weasley's Wizard Wheezes products to boost his confidence, never once suggesting proper training or professional equipment might help him more. Consider the implications of this sport being compulsory in Hogwarts culture. The school has no elective system for sports. A student either makes the team or remains a spectator. There are no alternative physical activities or safer versions of the game. For children with fear of heights or no prior flying experience, this exclusion reinforces a hierarchy of bravery measured solely through reckless behavior. There is no magical alternative for physical expression. Where are the wizarding equivalents of chess clubs, swimming pools, or dance? It is Quidditch or nothing. Moreover, the social pressure to perform in Quidditch often mirrors toxic expectations found in the Muggle world. Harry, often exhausted and emotionally strained, is still expected to save the day with a last-minute snitch capture. The pressure builds across multiple books. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, after a match, Ginny scolds Ron for his poor performance with an insult that stings more than a bludger. "You were rubbish." These are children. Why are they pushed into such high-stakes, high-impact matches without professional oversight or adult restraint? A sport where injuries are frequent should have evolved protective measures. The magical world, capable of conjuring shields and healing broken limbs in minutes, shows no sign of using those powers proactively. Why is there no spell equivalent to a parachute charm that activates when a player falls? Why not enchant uniforms to absorb impact? Why is Madame Pomfrey always reactive, waiting for the bodies to pile up in the hospital wing, instead of being empowered to challenge the safety standards of the game? Then there's the issue of the game's predictability. With the Seeker's role so dominant, the rest of the match becomes background noise until the snitch appears. Tactics, strategy, and teamwork are often rendered irrelevant by a single lucky sighting. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, we learn that professional Quidditch teams spend years training, yet even those matches end abruptly if a Seeker is fast enough. Imagine a World Cup final in soccer decided by a bonus ball worth 15 goals, an absurdity the wizarding world accepts without question. The Magic community's obsession with tradition may partly explain this resistance to change. Quidditch, with its centuries-old roots, is treated as sacrosanct. The rules, reportedly laid down by the Department of Magical Games and Sports, are treated with the reverence of Scripture. Any attempt to question or modernize them is dismissed as sacrilege. Even Hermione Granger, known for her sharp mind and logic, expresses little interest in critiquing Quidditch, perhaps afraid of appearing unpatriotic or anti-fun. But what of the broader ethical implications? Allowing children to participate in a game so skewed toward injury and luck raises serious concerns about adult responsibility in the wizarding world. Where are the discussions about consent, risk management, and student welfare? Where is the magical equivalent of a sports board or parental consent form? The school hosts regular matches, draws large crowds, and glorifies dangerous behavior in its own publications like the Daily Prophet and the Quibbler, without once inviting scrutiny. When Draco Malfoy becomes Seeker not for talent, but because his father buys the Slytherin team Nimbus 2001 brooms, the game's other flaw comes into focus. Money can buy performance. There is no standard broomstick regulation, no enforced equality of equipment. If the sport allows a wealthy family to purchase superiority, what does that say about the values being taught to children? This is not just a flaw in game design, it is a flaw in magical society's moral fabric. Some might argue that Quidditch teaches resilience, courage, and teamwork. But when the cost is a broken spine or a psychological breakdown, the trade-off feels unjust. Wouldn't a redesigned version of the sport, where risk is mitigated and skill rewarded more equitably, better serve those same values? Where is the magical innovation that redefined potions and charms applied to sports? Why does Hogwarts, a beacon of education, still host games better suited to a gladiator arena? In a world where potions can mend bones and charms can extend life, how has no one invented a less violent ball than the bludger? Its purpose is not strategic, but purely aggressive. It is sentient violence for violence's sake. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry is nearly thrown from his broom by a combination of Dementor interference and weather, but even in such lethal conditions, the match is not postponed. Instead, his broom is destroyed. The players continue, the game doesn't stop, the show must go on. Quidditch romanticizes recklessness. It worships the daredevil, idolizes the risk-taker, and mocks the cautious. Its heroes are those who chase the snitch with bloodied knuckles and storm-torn cloaks. Yet, in rewarding only the flashy finish, it discourages endurance, balance, and strategy. It is a game of single moments, not sustained effort. Is that really the lesson Hogwarts wants to teach? One cannot help but feel that Rowling's design of Quidditch, though thrilling on the page, is built more for narrative convenience than realism. It gives her a way to put Harry in danger, to make him shine, to allow last-minute victories. But for readers who look deeper, who see the inconsistencies and inequities, the game starts to lose its magic. The fantasy is beautiful, but beneath it lies a recklessness the magical world has no excuse to tolerate. Hogwarts should know better. The wizarding world should demand more. If magic can bend the rules of life and death, it can surely rewrite the rules of a game. The question isn't why Quidditch is the way it is. The question is why no one in the magical world seems to care. Number 22. Why are there no elections at Hogwarts? Of all the mysteries hidden in the castle's endless staircases and moving portraits, few are more unsettling than the silence surrounding the governance of Hogwarts. As the premier educational institution in the wizarding world, it molds the minds and morals of every young witch and wizard in Britain Yet despite its pivotal role, the school exists as a fortress of unquestioned authority. There are no elections, no student councils, no visible mechanisms through which pupils or even staff might influence decision-making. In a world where magic defies the laws of nature, it is the absence of something so fundamentally mundane, democracy, that rings loudest. Hogwarts is ruled by a headmaster whose power appears absolute. Whether it's Albus Dumbledore, Severus Snape, Dolores Umbridge, or Armando Dippet before them, their word becomes law without oversight. The appointment of teachers, enforcement of rules, and even the most life-altering decisions, such as whether a student is expelled, are made without transparency. No faculty votes, no student representatives speak, no charters are debated. When Dumbledore permits Harry to risk his life in the Triwizard Tournament, there is no public. When he installs Sybil Trelawney, despite her unstable prophecies, there is no accountability. Hogwarts is not governed, it is ruled. The process by which prefects are chosen encapsulates this silence. There are no applications, no campaigns, no open evaluations. One day, an owl arrives with a badge, and that is the end of it. Hermione Granger, one of the most academically gifted students in Hogwarts history, never learns why she was selected over Harry Potter, who himself admits he was baffled by the choice. Even Ron Weasley, appointed alongside her, expresses confusion. Me? But why me? This absence of explanation is treated not with curiosity, but with resignation. The students accept it because they must. There is no room for challenge, no structure for dissent. The most powerful example of unchecked authority comes during the reign of Dolores Umbridge. With backing from the Ministry of Magic, she ascends to High Inquisitor and changes the very fabric of the school. Her rule is tyrannical, and yet the students have no formal means to resist. Their rebellion is forced underground, culminating in the secret formation of Dumbledore's army. These children, led by Harry, gather in an abandoned room to teach themselves what the school has forbidden. The very existence of the DA is proof of systemic failure. It exists because the students have no other choice. This absence of democratic structure is not confined to moments of crisis. Even under Dumbledore, a figure so revered he is compared to Merlin, students are not consulted about their education. They are sorted at age 11 into houses that define their identity for life. They are told what classes to take, which rooms to live in, whom to compete against. There is no mechanism to appeal or influence these decisions. Luna Lovegood, isolated in Ravenclaw despite her gentle kinship with Harry's group, cannot choose another path. Neville Longbottom, mocked for years in Gryffindor, might have flourished in Hufflepuff, but the Sorting Hat's choice is final. No vote, no reconsideration, no discussion. Contrast this with the non-magical world. In most Muggle schools, even primary-level institutions offer student councils or class representatives. Teenagers especially are encouraged to voice concerns, participate in decisions, and contribute to shaping their environment. These councils do not wield great power, but they are symbolic of a society that values civic engagement. They teach students that their voices matter. At Hogwarts, however, silence is part of the curriculum. It is worth noting that J.K. Rowling portrays the wizarding world as a deeply conservative society. Change comes slowly, if at all. The ministry is bloated and bureaucratic, the Daily Prophet is riddled with propaganda, and wizarding families cling to bloodlines with medieval fervour. In this context, Hogwarts is not an outlier, it is a microcosm. Its lack of democracy is not an oversight. It is a reflection of the magical world's discomfort with transparency and equality. Even the ghosts of Hogwarts reinforce hierarchy rather than challenge it. The Bloody Baron haunts Slytherin with a mixture of fear and sorrow, while nearly headless Nick serves Gryffindor as a jester more than a sage. There is no ghostly council, no advisory roles. Even the enchanted paintings that line the hallways serve authority. Phineas Nigellus Black, a former headmaster, continues to voice contempt for students long after his death. These spirits are echoes of a tradition that reveres status and dismisses participation. The consequences of this structure, or lack thereof, are not merely philosophical. They are emotional and ethical. Students like Draco Malfoy thrive not because they are exceptional, but because they understand the system. They manipulate it, confident that their heritage will protect them. Meanwhile, students like Colin Creevey, eager and passionate, remain on the margins. No prefect badge, no Quidditch team, no voice. When he dies in the Battle of Hogwarts, it is as a footnote. The school he loved gave him nothing in return. It is in the treatment of house elves that we see another layer of this structural rot. These magical beings live in the bowels of Hogwarts, laboring without recognition. Their servitude is systemic, invisible to most students. When Hermione attempts to challenge this injustice, she is mocked. Her Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare is treated as a joke. Even Dobby, once freed, struggles to find respect. The students are not taught to question why the elves are enslaved. They are taught not to notice. During the Battle of Hogwarts, we witness a flicker of what could have been. Students, teachers, and even enchanted suits of armor band together to protect their home. Decisions are made collaboratively. Older students guard the younger. Professors consult with one another. It is chaotic, imperfect, and profoundly human. But this moment of unity arises not because of Hogwarts' system, but in spite of it. When the dust settles, there is no indication that anything will change, no suggestion that the students will be given more say, no hint that the school will open itself to evolution. The professors, for their part, are equally voiceless. When Dumbledore dies, the staff is not consulted about his successor. When Umbridge arrives, they grumble in private but have no formal way to oppose her decrees. Even Minerva McGonagall, the school's stern and brilliant deputy headmistress, must obey silently until she finds a moment to rebel. This is not a faculty. It is a collection of brilliant minds reduced to spectators. Sybil Trelawney is dismissed from her post by Umbridge without due process. Hagrid, beloved by students, is nearly sacked more than once. Firenze the Centaur is brought in under controversial terms. These decisions affect lives, yet they are made behind closed doors. The only visible body of governance, the Board of Governors, intervenes rarely and usually at the ministry's behest. There is no sense that the school belongs to its people. The silence of the Sorting Hat is the final betrayal. This sentient artifact entrusted with shaping the futures of every student never speaks after the first night. It does not revisit its decisions. It offers no counsel. Its songs, cryptic and ominous, are treated as tradition rather than instruction. When it warns of disunity in Harry's 5th year, though condemned I am to split you, still I worry that it's wrong, no action follows. Its prophecy is ignored. The students march on, divided, because no one teaches them to ask why. Why are there no elections? Because no one believes they are necessary. Why are students denied a voice? Because the system was built without one. Why does no one protest? Because the culture of Hogwarts, like the broader magical world, equates questioning with rebellion. The motto, Draco dormiens nunquam titilandus, advises caution. Do not wake the sleeping dragon. Do not ask too much. Even Harry, the boy who challenged Voldemort and defeated death, never pushes for reform. He leaves Hogwarts a hero but not a revolutionary. He does not demand changes to the curriculum. He does not ask why Snape, a cruel and biased teacher, was allowed unchecked power. He does not insist that the voices of students like Luna or Neville be heard. In the end, he accepts Hogwarts as it is because it gave him love. But love can blind as much as it can inspire. The real tragedy is that the magic of Hogwarts, the floating candles, the talking portraits, the enchanted staircases, is more advanced than its politics. It can defy gravity but not tradition. It can mimic life but not democracy. It can raise armies of statues but not a single elected voice. There is a moment buried in the first book where Albus Dumbledore tells Harry, It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Yet perhaps the dream of a better Hogwarts, one where every child has a voice, every decision is shared, and every injustice is questioned, is worth dwelling on. Not to escape life, but to change it. Because if the most powerful school in the wizarding world cannot teach freedom, then what kind of future is it preparing for? If Hogwarts remains a castle of silence, then maybe the true Dark Lord isn't Voldemort, but the system that made him possible. Number 23. Why are old magical laws never revised? In the narrow alleys of the wizarding world, hidden behind the grand facades of Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic, lies a silent truth most witches and wizards choose to ignore. The laws of magic, those seemingly sacred decrees etched into the very stone of wizarding society, are not just outdated, they are dangerously static. Centuries have passed, wars have been fought, blood has been spilled, and still these laws remain anchored in a past that no longer understands the present. The magical world moves in shadows, but its legal system is a relic that refuses to evolve, even as the stakes grow higher with each passing generation. Consider the case of Harry Potter, a 15-year-old boy living under the oppressive guardianship of the Dursleys, forced into the role of a scapegoat, an orphan, and eventually a hero. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry performs a Patronus charm to protect himself and his cousin Dudley from Dementors. The context is clear, it is a life-threatening situation. Yet instead of receiving commendation for his quick thinking and bravery, Harry is served a notice of expulsion from Hogwarts and summoned to a disciplinary hearing at the Ministry of Magic. "You performed the Patronus charm in the presence of a muggle," states the letter. Coldly. But Harry's use of magic wasn't a prank or a breach of discipline, it was survival, and the law did not care. What makes this situation especially infuriating is that Dolores Umbridge, a senior ministry official, has the authority to use the Cruciatus curse on students during interrogations, as she threatens to do with Harry in the same book. This curse is one of the unforgivable curses meant to torture and inflict excruciating pain. According to wizarding law, its use should result in a life sentence in Azkaban, yet no such consequences follow. The law bends for the powerful. It remains rigid only for the vulnerable. This hypocrisy becomes more disturbing when we remember that Professor Moody, later revealed to be Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise, demonstrates the imperious curse on students in Goblet of Fire. "Now who's feeling brave?" he asks, before casting the spell on children. And yet no outcry follows, no disciplinary review, no angry parents. The law condemns the spell as one of the most dangerous tools of the dark arts, and still it finds a home in a classroom because it is authorized. Authorization, it seems, is the only thing standing between criminal and educator. There is no logic to this double standard, only control. The law against underage magic is enforced without nuance or compassion, yet its most sacred prohibitions are treated like suggestions when wielded by those in power. This raises a chilling question. Who writes these laws and who ensures they reflect justice rather than control? The Ministry of Magic acts as both legislator and enforcer, an institution with no real system of checks or balances. In Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore tells the Wizengamot, laws can be changed if enough people demand it, but the Ministry ensures that never happens. It silences dissent and manufactures fear, not only among Muggles but within the magical community itself. Change is not simply discouraged, it is treated as rebellion. Take the case of Sirius Black. Imprisoned without trial in Azkaban, Sirius becomes a living symbol of the failings of magical law. No hearing, no opportunity to defend himself. He is guilty by association, punished for who he is rather than what he's done. When he escapes, the Ministry launches a manhunt not to correct a miscarriage of justice, but to silence a potential threat to its image. It takes years and the exposure of Peter Pettigrew for the truth to even begin to surface. Then there is the statute forbidding magical interference in Muggle affairs. While it may have originated to protect both worlds, it has become a tool of oppression. In Half-Blood Prince, the Prime Minister of Britain is visited by Cornelius Fudge and later Rufus Scrimgeour. They inform him of magical threats, offer no solutions, and depart. He is told that protection is available, but is never asked for input. The Prime Minister exists merely to be informed, not consulted, highlighting the arrogance of a government that believes it owes no accountability to anyone outside its cloistered halls. And what of house elves, the silent victims of an archaic magical labour system? Bound by enchantments that prevent them from disobeying their masters, house elves are a stark reminder that magical law not only fails to protect the innocent, it institutionalizes their suffering. Hermione Granger's formation of SPEW was ridiculed by her peers and ignored by the ministry. When she says, house elves get a very raw deal, it's slavery, that's what it is. She voices what the law refuses to acknowledge. If laws are designed to protect, why do they preserve systems of servitude? The same rigid mindset governs Hogwarts itself. When students are attacked by the basilisk in Chamber of Secrets, the school nearly closes. Harry is suspected without proof, simply because he can speak Parseltongue. The lack of a transparent legal process means suspicion equates to guilt. Rules are applied not to maintain safety, but to protect institutional reputation. Justice is optional, silence is enforced. One of the most brutal examples of legal rigidity is the expulsion of students for using magic outside school. Rubeus Hagrid was expelled in his 3rd year under suspicion of opening the Chamber of Secrets. His wand was broken, his education ended, and his future stolen without proof. Decades later, the truth is revealed, but no restitution is made, no apology. The system does not revisit its mistakes, it buries them. So why does the magical world resist reform so passionately? The answer may lie in the concentration of power. The wizarding elite, families like the Malfoys and officials like Fudge, have a vested interest in keeping things as they are. Reform threatens the hierarchies that protect them. It introduces uncertainty and, worst of all, accountability. If laws were revisited, their roles would be questioned, their privileges scrutinized. Even Dumbledore, revered as a moral compass, occasionally circumvents the law rather than challenge it. In Philosopher's Stone, he arranges for Harry to be placed with the Dursleys without offering the child a say or considering alternatives. When questioned about it later, Dumbledore simply says, "You are protected, in short, by your ability to love." But love is no substitute for legal protection. The magical law offers no provisions for guardianship hearings or the welfare of magical orphans. It assumes compliance, not compassion. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement, with its divisions of auras and hit wizards, acts swiftly when hunting enemies, but slowly when investigating injustice. Cases like those of Stan Shunpike, arrested during the Second Wizarding War under suspicion of Death Eater activity, highlight the paranoia that replaces evidence. Kingsley Shacklebolt later admits that Stan was likely innocent, but the damage is done. The law does not seek truth, it seeks control. Consider also the issue of werewolf rights. Remus Lupin, a brilliant professor and loyal member of the Order of the Phoenix, is forced into hiding because of his condition. The law does not protect him, it stigmatizes him. In Half-Blood Prince, he says, "I am not a full human being in the eyes of the ministry." There are no legal protections for magical beings, only restrictions. It is not justice, it is discrimination enshrined in law. Even the educational system reinforces this hierarchy. OWLs and NEWTs are gatekeepers, determining future careers and social mobility. But what support exists for students from less privileged backgrounds? What accommodations are made for trauma, war, or family loss? None. The law assumes equal opportunity where there is none. It legislates meritocracy, ignoring reality. And finally, the existence of the unforgivable curses raises the most disturbing questions. Who decided these were the only 3? Why is sectum sempra, a spell invented by Snape that slices flesh, not on the list? Why is obliviate, which erases memory, legal without regulation? Gilderoy Lockhart used it freely on his victims, stealing their glory and condemning them to confusion. The law did nothing until it backfired. And even then, there was no broader legal conversation about its misuse. The magical world romanticizes its history, but resists the burden of introspection. Its laws are carved in stone, not because they are perfect, but because those in power fear the chisel of reform. They feared that the voices of the young, like Hermione, like Harry, like the DA, might demand a world where justice is not reserved for the privileged, a world where casting a spell to save your life does not make you a criminal, a world where being different does not make you disposable. In the end, the greatest spell the Ministry ever cast was not found in a book of charms or hexes. It was the illusion that their laws serve justice. But illusions fade, and when they do, the question remains, if magic can change the shape of reality, why do its laws remain chained to the past? Number 24. Why is it so easy to fake potions, spells, and documents? In the shadowed corners of the wizarding world, beneath the gleam of floating candles and enchanted portraits, lies an uncomfortable truth that no amount of magic seems to hide. Fraud, forgery, and falsification flourish with eerie ease, defying logic and raising troubling questions about the integrity of a society that prides itself on ancient wisdom and powerful enchantments, from love potions sold to impressionable children to false identities that remain undetected for months. The magical community of J.K. Rowling's world seems strangely ill-prepared to combat even the most blatant of deceptions. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the entire premise of the Triwizard Tournament collapses under the weight of a single deception. Barty Crouch Jr., a convicted Death Eater, escapes Azkaban using Polyjuice Potion and impersonates the formidable ex-aura Alastor Mad-Eye Moody for an entire school year. During this time, he teaches defense against the dark arts, interacts with staff and students, and manipulates the entire tournament to bring Harry to Voldemort. No one, neither Dumbledore, McGonagall, Snape, nor the Ministry, realizes the truth. The only person who suspects something is amiss is Draco Malfoy, and even he is more suspicious of Moody's attitude than his identity. If Moody's such a good dark wizard catcher, why has he got a flask he never lets go of? Draco sneers, unknowingly poking at the charade. How could such a critical security failure occur in a world where legilimency, veritaserum, and magical detection spells exist? Even more disturbing is the widespread sale of magical counterfeits. Fred and George Weasley, though lovable and entrepreneurial, run a business that openly sells love potions to underage students. These potions are not mere pranks, they induce strong emotional manipulation, bordering on magical coercion. In Half-Blood Prince, Romilda Vane attempts to use one on Harry. Ron accidentally consumes the potion and becomes so obsessed with Romilda that he can barely function. Slughorn must intervene with an antidote. "I can't see anything wrong with him," Slughorn says uneasily, before quickly recognizing the effects. The potion causes such a profound change in behavior that it momentarily seizes Ron's free will, and yet these products are sold in bright packages in Diagon Alley like candy. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes also markets trick wands that explode, biting teacups and Tun-Tung toffees that physically alter a person's body. These may appear humorous, but they carry real magical consequences. The trick wands, for instance, are indistinguishable from real ones at first glance and react unpredictably. The ethical implications are staggering. In a world where a wand defines a wizard's identity, how can it be legal or safe to distribute fake ones without regulation? The mere existence of such items reveals a broader truth. The wizarding world has virtually no framework for consumer protection, product safety, or magical licensing. Document forgery is not only possible, it's rampant. In Order of the Phoenix, Harry receives a letter from the Ministry of Magic accusing him of illegal underage magic. Later, in the Department of Mysteries, prophecies rest in glowing orbs that can be smashed, stolen, or manipulated. These are records of immense magical value, some concerning life and death, and yet they are left on shelves unguarded and unprotected from tampering. When Harry and his friends infiltrate the department, they easily navigate its chambers, eventually witnessing the destruction of many prophecies. In a violent battle, there is no enchantment to prevent unauthorized access, no alarms, no sentient gatekeepers, only locked doors and misleading rooms. The situation grows more bizarre with the Marauders map. This singular artifact, crafted by 4 teenage students, James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, shows the location of every person within Hogwarts in real time. It even identifies meninogui, ghosts, and those under magical disguises. Yet this map remains one of a kind. Not only does the Ministry not use such technology, but Dumbledore himself, who leads the Order of the Phoenix, never attempts to replicate or utilize it for broader security purposes. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Lupin recognizes the map immediately and even warns Harry, "You should have handed it." It's dangerous. Dangerous, but accurate. So why is such a tool not standard issue for Aurors or school administrators? Further still, Rita Skeeter, a registered journalist, spends much of Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix eavesdropping and falsifying stories while illegally transforming into a beetle. She is an unregistered animagus, violating strict magical law, and no one discovers this except Hermione, a 15-year-old student. Hermione traps Skeeter in a jar and blackmails her into silence, a shocking but necessary response in a world where legal recourse is absurdly ineffective. Skeeter's articles destroy reputations, spread disinformation, and manipulate public opinion. The wizarding media evidently lacks any regulatory body or magical truth-checking enchantment. When it comes to magical identification, the wizarding world is nearly medieval. There are no magical ID cards, no enchanted documents with unforgettable signatures or protective spells. In Deathly Hallows, several characters, including Harry, Ron, and Hermione, assume false identities using Polyjuice Potion. They enter the Ministry of Magic undetected. They navigate secured floors, access restricted files, and interact with key figures while impersonating Ministry employees. Not a single checkpoint questions their identities. Even Yaxley, a high-ranking Death Eater, is fooled by Hermione's disguise of Mafalda Hopkirk. In a world that boasts memory charms and detection spells, how is it that the Ministry has no magical biometric system? The Gringotts break-in, orchestrated by Harry and his allies, highlights another alarming failure. Despite centuries of being considered the safest place in the wizarding world, the bank's security is undermined by a goblin ally, a dragon disguise, and a few spells. The vaults are protected by multiplying curses and burning objects, but there is no verification of the intruders' identities. Hermione's disguise as Bellatrix Lestrange is passable enough that the goblins grant access. A Polyjuice Potion, a stolen wand, and a confident attitude suffice to breach what should be the most secure vault in Britain. The real Bellatrix would have obliterated them on sight. Why is there no enchantment to confirm wand ownership, no magical fingerprint or blood recognition spell? The case of Tom Riddle's forged diary is even more chilling. This object, infused with a fragment of Voldemort's soul, manipulates Ginny Weasley into opening the Chamber of Secrets. The diary writes back, charms her, and eventually possesses her. No adult, not even Dumbledore, detects the dark enchantment until the very end. In a society obsessed with dangerous artifacts, why aren't there standard magical scans for cursed items, especially in schools? Why wasn't the diary flagged the moment it entered Hogwarts? The diary was enchanted, Dumbledore tells Harry. Enchanted, yes, but also dangerously untraceable. Dolores Umbridge, a high-ranking Ministry official, pins fake decrees across the Hogwarts walls throughout Order of the Phoenix, issuing laws that suppress, control, and punish students. These decrees bear no sign of magical consensus or verification. They appear, and they are law. Even teachers like McGonagall and Flitwick are powerless to question their authenticity. Umbridge even fabricates a blood quill punishment, torture disguised as detention. "You haven't given me any," she says coldly, forcing Harry to carve words into his own hand. The Ministry again shows no oversight, no protective spells to prevent magical abuse in educational environments. Even birth certificates, family trees, and official wizarding documents are vulnerable. In Chamber of Secrets, the rumor that Hermione is a Muggle-born makes her a target for discrimination and violence. There is no central record to verify blood status, no enchanted document that instantly proves lineage or background. Everything is hearsay and prejudice, and characters like Draco Malfoy exploit this chaos. "You'll be next, mudbloods," he hisses, emboldened by a system that lacks any real documentation or magical truth. In The Half-Blood Prince, Snape's identity as the titular character is revealed only after his death. The phrase, "property of the Half-Blood Prince," is scrawled inside a textbook containing spells, notes, and dangerous modifications. Harry uses this book all year without understanding the origin of its content. No spell alerts the staff, no enchantment marks it as dark or potentially dangerous. This is a book used to cast Sectum Sempra, a spell so violent it nearly kills Draco. The Hogwarts library has a restricted section, but clearly a student's own possessions can be more lethal than anything found behind locked shelves. The use of memory charms, particularly Obliviate, adds another layer of moral ambiguity. Gilderoy Lockhart builds an entire career on stolen memories. He erases the minds of real heroes, claiming their stories as his own. "The trick is to be careful with the wand movement," he boasts before the spell backfires on him. His fraud continues for years, unchallenged. No one questions the inconsistencies in his tales. No magical authority cross-checks his stories with the surviving victims. In a world where memories can be altered or stolen, how can truth survive? In Deathly Hallows, the Ministry of Magic is taken over by Death Eaters using deception and intimidation. They produce fake pamphlets, rewrite historical facts, and brand Muggle-borns as undesirables. Entire families are imprisoned or executed based on forged documents and lies. Xenophilius Lovegood prints the truth in The Quibbler, and his daughter is kidnapped as a result. In a world filled with magical means to discern truth, it is fiction that dominates public discourse. Truth is silenced not by spells, but by fear, bureaucracy, and propaganda. Even the Daily Prophet, the wizarding world's primary news source, is rife with falsehoods. Its coverage is easily swayed by the Ministry's agenda. Throughout Order of the Phoenix, it portrays Harry as an unstable liar and Dumbledore as a dangerous old man. No magical oath binds journalists to honesty. No enchanted ink detects lies. Information, arguably the most powerful force in any society, is left to the whims of those in power, with no magical system to regulate it. The Forbidden Forest harbours creatures and beings who live entirely beyond the reach of wizarding law. Centaurs, werewolves, giants, beings who can be impersonated, controlled, or manipulated. Lupin, a werewolf, must hide his condition despite teaching children. Fenrir Greyback uses his affliction as a weapon. There is no registry that ensures safety, no protective charm that alerts the public. This is not a failure of compassion, but of magical governance. Even death is not sacred. The Resurrection Stone, the Mirror of Erist, and the Horcruxes all challenge the finality of life. Yet these powerful artifacts are not safeguarded. They are hidden in forests, lockers, and caves, protected more by luck and mystery than law or spell. Wizards seem content to let fate decide who wields power, rather than establish a consistent system of magical protection or authentication. Number 25. Why is there no universal magical education system? In the silence of the Great Hall, with its floating candles and shifting ceiling, students at Hogwarts prepare for their OWLs, ordinary wizarding levels. They study late into the night, practicing spells, memorizing magical theory, and grappling with the terrifying idea that their futures hinge on these exams. But if a French student from Beauxbatons Academy or a Norwegian pupil from Durmstrang were to arrive at that very moment, they would likely stare blankly at the syllabus. The spell names might sound familiar, the theory might echo what they know, but the structure, the timing, the grading, the expectation would feel alien. In a world where magic transcends borders and time, the absence of a standardized magical education system is more than curious. It's unsettling. When Dumbledore appears at the Triwizard Tournament and discusses unity between schools, it is with warmth and grandeur. Yet behind the speeches and the pomp, the underlying truth remains. These schools barely know each other. Durmstrang teaches the dark arts openly, a decision that would horrify most Hogwarts professors. Beauxbatons appears to emphasize grace and charm, focusing on elegance in spellwork. And then there is Ilvermorny, hidden in the American wilderness, with its own houses, traditions and curriculum that we only glimpse in brief descriptions. These are not mere cultural variations, they are different educational philosophies entirely, and that has consequences. Hogwarts students begin their formal magical education at age 11. But at Castelo Bruxo in Brazil, young witches and wizards study magical flora and fauna from the Amazon from an early age, with a deep focus on magical creatures and potion ingredients unique to the rainforest. Would a graduate from Castelo Bruxo be able to pass a British OWL exam in Transfiguration? Possibly not. And yet, that does not make them less of a wizard. It only highlights how fragmented magical education is. There are no shared standards, no universal magical theory that all wizards agree upon, no equivalency test that bridges one school's curriculum with another. In the Muggle world, the International Baccalaureate program offers students a unified set of academic benchmarks across countries. There are exchange programs, international science fairs, and global research initiatives. Wizards, with access to instant communication via owl post, apparition, and flu powder, should, by all logic, be decades ahead in global coordination. Yet we hear nothing of a World Magical Conference on education. There is no magical UNESCO. The Department of International Magical Cooperation exists at the Ministry of Magic, but it seems to function more as a diplomatic bureau than an educational authority. Even within the limited scope of what we know, the disparities are striking. Take the subject of Muggle studies. At Hogwarts it is an elective, often derided and rarely taken seriously. But in Mahoutokoro, the Japanese School of Magic, students are encouraged to blend magical knowledge with Muggle academic subjects, including technology and mathematics, which are viewed not as a threat but as complementary knowledge. One cannot help but wonder, how do these philosophical rifts affect magical society as a whole? Does ignorance of other systems breed mistrust and prejudice, just as it does in the non-magical world? Consider the case of Victor Krum, a champion from Durmstrang. He comes to Hogwarts as a representative of his school during the Triwizard Tournament, but how much do we truly learn about his academic background? Does he sit for equivalent exams? Is there a magical diploma? When Hermione Granger, arguably the most intellectually curious student at Hogwarts, converses with Krum, it is never about curriculum. It is about personal interests, Quidditch, and cultural confusion. What kind of magical culture allows such silos to persist? There is also the matter of magical law. In Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Barty Crouch Sr. is a high-ranking official at the Ministry of Magic, but his authority seems limited to Britain. What laws govern Beauxbatons students? Are their educational institutions held to different safety standards? After all, Hogwarts is notorious for its lack of consistent protection, three-headed dogs, cursed objects, basilisk attacks. Is this the norm or a British eccentricity? And if it is the latter, why does no one intervene? Language too becomes a question. Spells are usually in Latin, suggesting a shared foundation, But even here there is no confirmed standard. In Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, we see witches and wizards in New York using spells identical to those in Britain. Does this mean they learn from the same textbooks? Or is magical knowledge simply absorbed through tradition, passed from teacher to student with little oversight? Such questions are never answered, and the silence grows louder the longer one examines it. The Triwizard Tournament is, supposedly, a means of fostering international cooperation. Yet it is a game of danger, competition, and isolation. The students do not study together. They do not share notes or ideas. They are pitted against each other in life-threatening tasks. This is not academic collaboration. It is a show. And when the tournament ends in death, when Cedric Diggory is murdered, and Harry is scarred forever, there is no international council to address the failure. There is only silence. Even the existence of magical research seems disjointed. In The Half-Blood Prince, we learn about advanced potion-making techniques through a defaced textbook. The greatest innovations in Harry's world are individual, secretive, and scattered. There is no indication of peer-reviewed journals, scientific committees, or magical symposiums. Where are the gatherings of scholars, the shared discoveries, the academic discourse that should define a magical civilization? And let us not forget Hermione, who often reads ahead in subjects, consults multiple textbooks, and questions the logic of spells. She is, in many ways, a natural researcher, but even she is limited by what is available in the Hogwarts library. There is no inter-school loan, no central repository of magical knowledge. When she needs more information on Horcruxes, she must resort to breaking into the headmaster's office. This is not how a functioning educational system should operate. The lack of standardization also has political implications. Imagine if wizards from Germany, France, and India were trained with completely different ethical frameworks. A Durmstrang graduate might find nothing wrong with the use of unforgivable curses, while a Hogwarts student would face life in Azkaban for the same. This isn't just a question of curriculum, it's a question of worldview. How can the magical world hope to maintain peace, let alone unity, when its children are taught entirely different versions of right and wrong? It becomes clear that the wizarding world is not a global society, but a patchwork of isolated enclaves. Each school is a castle, both literally and metaphorically. Each curriculum is a tradition passed down without scrutiny. There is no international oversight body, no inspectorate, no shared benchmarks. This is not romantic. It is regressive. And while the books celebrate the uniqueness of each school, they also hint, unintentionally, at the consequences of such division. Take, for instance, the use of magical creatures in education. At Hogwarts, Hagrid introduces students to hippogriffs and thestrals. But in Uagadou, the largest wizarding school in Africa, students are known for their prowess in astronomy and self-transfiguration. The magical fauna of their curriculum remains largely unknown. Does it overlap with the British system? Could a Hogwarts student recognize an African magical beast on sight? Likely not. And if they did, would they know how to interact with it safely? When Voldemort rises again, his threat is treated as a British problem. There is no global response, no magical NATO, no alliance of schools or ministries. The Order of the Phoenix is a grassroots rebellion, not an international defense initiative. Surely, if magical societies were truly interconnected, there would be protocols, emergency plans, shared intelligence, but none of this is present, and the cost is measured in lives. Even simple magical knowledge is not evenly distributed. Luna Lovegood's father publishes The Quibbler, a magazine of dubious reliability, but it circulates freely, influencing opinion. There is no magical press council, no international academic review. A misinformation crisis in the magical world would not only be possible, it would be inevitable, and again there is no sign that the educational system is equipped to counter it. The more one studies magical education, the more one senses that each school exists in a bubble. There is pride, certainly, and tradition. But tradition without adaptation becomes a prison. Hogwarts is a place of wonder, but it is also a place where ghosts roam freely, staircases shift without warning, and detention might involve wandering into the forbidden forest. These quirks are charming in fiction, but in reality, they would be liabilities. When Harry Potter walks into Hogwarts for the first time, he enters a world that is breathtaking and bewildering. But he also enters a system that has changed little in centuries. There is no educational reform, no policy debates, no comparative analysis. When Professor Umbridge attempts to impose government control, it is met with resistance, not because oversight is inherently evil, but because her methods are cruel. The underlying message, however, remains: Hogwarts resists change, and perhaps all magical schools do. A final, uncomfortable truth emerges. Magic, as Rowling created it, is a tool. It can be used for healing or harm, it can build or destroy, but its teaching is left to the whims of tradition, the preferences of headmasters, and the secrets of books that few are allowed to read. In such a world, how can we trust that the next generation of wizards will be wiser than the last? Without shared knowledge, without open dialogue, without universal education, the answer is simple: we can't. Number 26. Why are ghosts and spirits so common, yet no one studies death? The Great Hall was once again filled with laughter, chatter, and the clinking of goblets. Ghosts floated overhead like drifting clouds, translucent and serene. Sir Nicholas de Mimsy-Porpington, affectionately known as Nearly Headless Nick, smiled graciously at the Gryffindor first years as he glided past. For centuries, the wizarding world had accepted these spirits as part of everyday life, not as anomalies, but as regular citizens of the magical realm. Yet beneath this casual familiarity lies a chilling truth. No one seems to ask the deeper questions. Ghosts are real, death is visible, and still no one knows what death actually is. Harry Potter encountered death early and often, from the murder of his parents to the annual confrontations with danger at Hogwarts. Death was never far from him. But even as he grew older, more experienced, more scarred by loss, he found little help in understanding what awaited those who passed beyond the veil. In The Order of the Phoenix, Harry stood inside the Department of Mysteries and stared into the veil, a gossamer barrier fluttering inside the death chamber. "What's that archway?" he asked. The answer came from Luna Lovegood, whose mother had died young. "It's the veil. I can hear them too." But the adults around them, Dumbledore, Sirius, even the ministry workers, offered no further explanation. It was as if death, though physically manifest, remained a taboo, untouched by academic rigor. At Hogwarts there were teachers for potions, charms, transfiguration, arithmancy, and even the volatile subject of divination. But no curriculum, no class, not even a lecture, was ever dedicated to the magical study of death. The subject that looms largest in every human life, muggle or magical, was left to whispers, myths, and half-glimpsed truths. The presence of ghosts should have demanded a department of thanatological magic, a professor of post-mortal studies, or at least a research group in the Department of Mysteries, yet the silence remained absolute. The ghosts themselves are remarkably forthcoming. Nearly Headless Nick explained his condition in The Order of the Phoenix with unsettling calm. "I was afraid of death. I chose to remain behind. I am neither here nor there." This raises a terrifying philosophical question. What choice did he make? What are the mechanics of that decision? Is there an astral crossroad between life and death, where a soul may declare, "I stay"? Why is there no documentation of that moment, no magical method to communicate with souls at that threshold? The magical world, so advanced in memory manipulation and time-turning, appears utterly primitive when it comes to death. The nature of ghosts is further mystified by the silence around those who don't return. Lily and James Potter never appear as ghosts. When asked why, Dumbledore offers no answer. Instead, Harry experiences their shades through the priori incantatem effect in the graveyard scene of the Goblet of Fire. The last murders the wand performed echo back, but these echoes speak, comfort, and even touch Harry, giving him enough time to escape Voldemort. What are they, then? Not ghosts, not illusions? Are they fragments of soul, tethered to magic itself? The text gives us only a haunting image, never an explanation. If there was ever a wizard qualified to study the link between death and magic, it was Albus Dumbledore, the man who held the Elder Wand, who discovered the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and who helped create the Philosopher's Stone, a literal bridge to immortality. Yet even he remains frustratingly vague. In the Deathly Hallows, he tells Harry, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." A poetic line, but maddening in its evasion. Dumbledore had touched death, watched it take his sister, his lover, his friends. He conversed with a shadow of himself in King's Cross, but he never wrote a single tome on what death is. One wonders, did he know something so terrible he refused to write it down? The Department of Mysteries is the only institution that hints at a systematic study of death. One room is entirely devoted to it. Behind the veil lies something, a world, a void, a passage, that both tempts and terrifies. When Sirius Black is struck by Bellatrix's curse and falls through the arch, he does not bleed, he does not scream, he simply disappears. Lupin holds Harry back and whispers, "There's nothing you can do, Harry. He's gone." But the reader and Harry are left with no clarity. Where did he go? Did the veil destroy him, or merely carry him beyond? In a world where portraits can talk, think, and advise long after death, like the painting of Phineas Nigellus or the many former headmasters in Dumbledore's office, why do ghosts seem to exist in a lesser state? Why do portraits retain wisdom and personality, while ghosts appear stuck in a loop of their former identity? Could they be projections rather than the soul itself? And if so, what becomes of the actual consciousness of the dead? Voldemort's obsession with immortality led him to create Horcruxes, horrific magical containers for fragments of his soul. This is perhaps the only true magical experiment related to death in the entire series. Yet it is portrayed as evil, taboo, monstrous. No school discusses the ethical philosophy behind it. No researcher analyzes the risks. Only Slughorn in secret speaks of it in hushed tones. To rip the soul into 7 pieces and is to defy the natural order of things. But who decides what the natural order is, and why is the magical world so afraid of understanding the boundaries of death? The Resurrection Stone, another of the Deathly Hallows, offers another glimpse into the possibility of contacting the dead. When Harry uses it before walking into the Forbidden Forest, he sees his parents, Sirius and Lupin. They are not ghosts. They are less substantial than living bodies, but much more than ghosts. They comfort him, speak to him, and vanish when he drops the stone. What are they? Memories? Spirits summoned through love and sacrifice? There is no academic explanation, no spell to summon such an encounter at will. Again, it is left to fate, and readers are denied a framework for understanding. Magic in Rowling's world is incredibly flexible. It can create love potions, change appearances, even resurrect the dead body of a snake from a diary. But the soul remains a mystery. One might expect a magical society to have developed a soul-scanning charm, a spell to verify the passage into the afterlife, or at least a theory about the structure of the human spirit. Instead, all we get is fear, folklore, and the occasional ghost story told by Peeves or the Bloody Baron. The Bloody Baron, with his blood-stained robes and eternally silent presence, is perhaps the most disturbing figure among the Hogwarts ghosts. His story, that he murdered Helena Ravenclaw in a fit of rage and then took his own life, suggests that trauma, guilt, and violence might influence a soul's choice to remain behind. But this too is never explored. Do powerful emotions anchor a soul to the mortal plane? Is the creation of a ghost an act of will, or a curse born from pain? The one character who seems to have truly touched death and returned with clarity is Harry himself. After being struck with the killing curse in the Deathly Hallows, he awakens in what seems to be a limbo, white, empty, and eerily peaceful. There he meets Dumbledore once more, who speaks in riddles and metaphors. "Is this real, or has this been happening inside my head?" Harry asks. Dumbledore replies, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean it is not real?" A beautiful line, but again, no answers. One cannot help but wonder what would happen if Hermione Granger, the most inquisitive and academic character in the series, had ever turned her intellect to death itself. She mastered spells far beyond her years, brewed Polyjuice Potion in second year, and figured out the secrets of the Deathly Hallows. Yet even she never asked, what are ghosts? What is the afterlife? Perhaps the silence on this subject is magical in itself, a taboo enforced not by law, but by fear. There is a recurring theme in Rowling's world. Some knowledge is too dangerous and therefore should not be sought. There is nothing to be feared from death, Dumbledore says. It is but the next great adventure. But how can an entire society operate on platitudes when ghosts float through the walls and shades return from wands? The magical world faces death every day, in duels, in dark magic, in creatures like Dementors, and yet its understanding of what comes after is less than that of a muggle hospice nurse. Even the dark arts, which explore the boundaries of the soul, offer no clarity. The creation of inferi, mindless, reanimated corpses, is an abomination. But it reveals that magic can manipulate bodies, just not the animating spirit. The Dementor's kiss, which sucks out the soul, is described as a fate worse than death. But what exactly is a soul if it can be consumed like mist? The question lingers, are souls finite? Can they be created, measured, saved? What's perhaps most unsettling is that the magical world seems content with its ignorance. Wizards who live for over 100 years, who ride dragons and defy gravity, have shown no institutional desire to understand what becomes of them after the end. Magical children are not taught about the metaphysics of their own mortality. No books in the Hogwarts library bear titles like The Arcane Anatomy of the Soul or Crossing the Veil, A Wizard's Guide to Death. Maybe the truth is too terrible. Maybe the magical world discovered something in the Department of Mysteries that made them seal the door and forget the key. Maybe the reason no one asks what death is because someone already did, and the answer was unbearable. Or maybe, just maybe, J.K. Rowling never wanted to look too closely herself. Maybe she wanted her readers to feel the chill of death without the warmth of answers, to watch ghosts drift past and know only that they are echoes of fear and longing. And maybe that's the most magical and the most terrifying thing of all. Number 27. Why do teenagers solve all the major problems? In the magical world of wands and wonders, where spells could rebuild bones and broomsticks fly beyond clouds, one question lingers like an unwelcome spectre. Why is the fate of everything, good, evil, life, death, repeatedly left in the trembling hands of children? The Harry Potter saga enchants millions with the idea that young hearts can battle darkness, but behind this hopeful illusion lies a troubling absence. In every crisis, the adults disappear, distracted or paralyzed, leaving adolescents to confront what no child should ever face. From the very first year at Hogwarts, it is Harry, Ron, and Hermione who uncover the truth about the Philosopher's Stone, not the professors. Albus Dumbledore, arguably the greatest wizard of the age, is conveniently away during the climax, leaving 3 11-year-olds to face the monstrous enchantments protecting the stone. Enchantments, it must be said, set up by the school staff themselves. Quirrell, an adult professor, is the villain. The rest, including McGonagall and Snape, either fail to notice or remain willfully blind, One might expect a secure environment in a school of magic, yet it is the children who patrol its mysteries. In their second year, Harry and Ron once again take matters into their own hands. The Chamber of Secrets is not just a myth, it is real, dangerous, and lethal. Students are being petrified, and the entire school is gripped by fear. What is the response of the adult community? Lockhart blusters uselessly. Dumbledore is removed. The Ministry, obsessed with its own protocols, arrests Hagrid and interrogates Dumbledore but fails to investigate the creature or the chamber itself. It is two 12-year-old boys who descend into the bowels of the castle, fight a basilisk and save Ginny Weasley. Not a single professor dares or tries to follow. By the third year, the adults' failures grow more ominous. Sirius Black is believed to be a dangerous murderer. Dementors, soul-sucking monstrosities, are stationed around the school. Yet no teacher prepares the students for what to do if confronted by them. Lupin, the one professor who actually teaches Harry to defend himself, is driven out by the end of the year due to a mix of prejudice and incompetence. Harry, now 13, is the only one who can cast a proper Patronus strong enough to repel dozens of Dementors. The responsibility is his, alone. The fourth year pushes the absurdity to an even darker edge. Harry is forcibly entered into the Triwizard Tournament, a contest explicitly reserved for adults, and no one stops it. Dumbledore, powerful and influential, doesn't intervene. Barty Crouch Jr., posing as Moody, manipulates events right under the noses of Hogwarts staff and the Ministry. It is Harry who witnesses Cedric's murder, Harry who watches Voldemort rise again, and Harry who escapes the graveyard alone, carrying the warning, adults appear only after the damage is done. And then the fifth year, the great unraveling. The Ministry of Magic, in its willful blindness, refuses to believe Voldemort has returned. It discredits Harry, manipulates the press, and places Dolores Umbridge at Hogwarts. Under her tyrannical rule, education becomes censorship. Practical defense is banned. What do the adults do? McGonagall is helpless. Dumbledore vanishes. Fudge denies reality. So it is Harry, 15, who forms Dumbledore's army. Teenagers, huddled in the room of requirement, teach each other spells that should have been taught by trained wizards. And when a vision strikes, Sirius in danger. Who acts? Not the Auras, not the Order of the Phoenix. Teenagers fly to the Department of Mysteries, where they are ambushed and brutalized. It is a miracle they survive. The sixth year strips away the last illusion of adult competence. Dumbledore, now fully aware of the threat Voldemort poses, focuses on the Horcruxes, and again he entrusts the task to Harry. He shares his findings with a 16-year-old student, no one else, not the professors, not the Ministry. The memory hunt is a child's quest, and then when the Death Eaters finally breach Hogwarts, who fights them first? The students. The Order arrives, but too late. Dumbledore dies at the top of the Astronomy Tower, murdered by Snape, and it is Harry who stands below, frozen by a spell, forced to watch. Not one adult intervenes in time.